What's happening, my friend?
Hello, Travis. Happy Monday.
And happy belated birthday to you, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it was a great birthday.
60 years old.
No.
Plus 5.
Plus 5. So, yeah, 40 years ago, I met my wife on August 1st, so 40 years ago yesterday. And also for everybody, MTV went on the air 40 years ago yesterday.
Is that right?
Yeah. So we met, that day was the day MTV
when
started.
MTV used to be good.
It was
and
good.
Cool.
Yeah. I didn't have it. I didn't have enough money back then to have MTV, so it was just something I heard about, but I do know.
What were the videos, the first videos they were playing on MTV back then?
Radio killed the television
star yeah.
or some shit like that. I don't know. Yeah, something like that. And I didn't see it because I didn't have it. Like I said, didn't have MTV.
Well, you didn't see it back then, and nobody's watching it now.
No. It's funny how much in 40 years, how much has changed. I mean, I can go home and watch all those videos. I have them all, and even that's outdated, right? I have them all in a hard drive in my Apple TV account, and of course, slowly but surely, everything that I had previously from Apple Music is disappearing and just being replaced by their stream of stuff. So I don't even know how that works. I'm not sure.
Well, I think we talked about it, right? Like, you don't really own what you buy on Apple Music or any of the streaming services. I think you're buying the right to replay it at your leisure whenever you want. But
right, but I had thousands of songs downloaded, and some of them I bought and some from MTV and
you bought them from MTV.
I'm sorry, from Apple TV.
From Apple,
sorry, yeah. And lots of videos that I downloaded from Apple and paid for, and then lots of songs that I ripped into my iTunes from my computer when it had a compact disc drive, right? And I could put the CD in there and then rip the songs or the whole CD into my. But most of that's gone, including all my own recordings, right?
Yeah.
I had 50 of my own recordings, and they're MP3s, I think, or so. Somehow the format is changed, and none of them will play. I can play them on my computer.
When you are not listening to us and you're listening to music, do you listen to a whole album, or are you streaming, just bouncing around?
No. The only thing what I really do, I mean, every once in a while, I do listen to an album, but that's pretty rare. I'm just thinking off the top of my head because I did it recently, and I did listen to the whole album, but I'm not going to remember what it was. Well, one was Abbey Road. I listened to that from song 1 to the end. But I have a bunch of stuff, and my iTunes putting together recently played. That's what I listen to most of the time. I have a bunch of playlists that I do. I don't even know what you call it anymore. Download songs into.
Yeah.
And so I must have like 20 playlists.
What was your birthday playlist?
No, I don't know. I mean, I got some headphones for my birthday, which I love. And I did listen to some stuff that day because of that. So, but nothing specific, right? Never played the Beatles' "Happy Birthday." If that's where you're going.
No, I was just curious. Is there anything that sets you in the mood for your birthday? Any particular era from the past?
No.
Just whatever. You're happy to wake up.
I'm happy to hear
pain-free.
Yeah, we had a great. It was.
But you weren't listening to Fox News.
No, I was not.
Is that allowed on your new headphones?
Yes.
Is it deprogrammed through your app?
Yeah. So the Connors got me the AirPod Max for my birthday. So thank you to the Connors. I very much love them, and it's pretty high tech. They're
badass.
Awesome.
They're pretty robust. You were just showing me.
Yeah, they're heavy duty. I think they're going to hold up well. When I get a text, right, there's a little voice that comes on and tells me the name of the person that reads me the text.
You know what's cool about those is, how if you're in a situation, maybe you're walking down the jetway to get on a plane, and you put the old days, you put your headphones on as if to say, nobody talk to me, don't disturb me, don't ask if you can sit next to me
right.
because the seat's taken,
right.
or I just don't want to sit next to you. But with the smaller headphones, like the Beats or the AirPods, sometimes you don't see it. They're so small they fit in your ear.
Yeah.
And it's harder to make that statement of leave me alone. But with your headphones, with those new ones, that's pretty obvious. Like, don't fucking talk to me. I can't hear you. I can't read lips.
I know they're metal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, is that when you touch them, it's like you're so used to, we have headphones on right now and they're plastic, and I have other headphones and they're all made out of plastic. These are literally made out of metal.
You could use them as a weapon too.
I know. So it's pretty amazing technology, and I'm really enjoying that. So that was a good birthday, right? I had a lot of family around, and we went out to dinner on Saturday night. Do you want to know where we went?
Where'd you go?
Lowry's Prime Rib in Beverly Hills.
Oh, you sent me the picture.
Yeah. So did you check that out with that?
How does that compare to a prime rib that you would have made?
Well, that's much better. I mean,
you think?
Yeah. Here's the thing. So Lowry, I went there once before, and I was just blown away by the meat. And I asked them then, I said, so how do I get this meat? How can I get this meat? And they're like, yeah, you can't get it.
Well, they're not going to give their source.
No, well, here's what it is. They are one of the oldest restaurants in L.A., and they have the meat contracts, so they get the best cuts, and the general public just cannot get them. And I'm not even sure any other restaurants can get them. I mean, I've had prime rib and steak in some pretty fancy restaurants. Thanks to my employer, has really gone out of his way to take us to some great restaurants over the years. So, I've had some pretty damn good meat, but it's always the best there. I mean, Lowry's prime rib, those roasts that they get, and they go through thousands.
Oh, I can imagine. And you're going like extra bloody, aren't you?
How did I order it? Medium.
Is that what it was? Medium?
Yeah. So, it's good. It comes with the mashed potatoes with a bunch of gravy, and then Debbie talked me into ordering a baked potato as well. So
you got mashed potatoes and a baked potato?
Yeah.
Did you eat them both?
I tried to substitute it, but they just don't do that. So I got them both. So I'm actually
instead of greens.
I didn't eat. No, we got some stupid greens. And she ordered some asparagus. Yeah, asparagus, and then cream corn is their other big thing, and then they have a great salad, and then they have Yorkshire pudding, which I'm not going to try to describe it because it's not pudding. Okay, it's a type of bread. It's like I think in America maybe we call them popovers mostly.
Yeah, but isn't it like mostly air? Like
it's hollow inside.
Yeah, it's like this big overblown kind of like chef's hat looking thing. Mm-hmm. And then you cut it and it collapses, and you're like, "Where the fuck is my dessert?"
Just tear it. It comes cut in quarters, right? So it's just, I can't even describe it, so good. And then if you're smart, you dip it in the au jus from the steak. So it's just a thing. Now everybody that Debbie and I have been there, but nobody else that went with us had ever been there. So, and it was several years ago, and so we go up there. It's the time of the pandemic, so. It's L.A., so I completely didn't even grab a mask, I didn't even bring one. I walk up and everybody is standing outside in front wearing a mask. And I'm like, and they're going, Mike, you got to wear a mask. And I'm like, out here? No, I fucking don't.
Did they have outdoor tents set up for outdoor seating?
They had a bunch of umbrellas, right, for the sun was out. They did have outdoor seating set up, and so they're like, "Hey, we're going to seat you outside." And I'm like, "No, that's not. I didn't ask for outside. I don't want to be sat outside." And they're like, "Well, if there's a wait if you want to eat inside." And I'm like, "I have a fucking reservation, right?" But this is Beverly Hills, and
they don't give a shit.
L.A., and so. And I just want to, because there's certain things at this restaurant. So for those of you that have never been there. Typically, they bring the meat out to you in these big stainless steel, they call them Zeppelins. They kind of look like Zeppelins on wheels. And they have big covers that they pull back. And
you get to pick.
You get to pick, and then that's how they bring the meat out. When it's cooked, it comes back out in one of these things, and all the side orders and everything. So they can't drag any of that shit outside. Now, I don't know if maybe they're not using all of that during the pandemic, if that's something. We never even went inside. The reception was outside, and so we ate outside. It was super nice night. It was really nice. And so none of that happened, right? They just brought us menus, and we picked. And so, it was a little different. It wasn't all the, what's the word I'm looking for? It wasn't all the,
it wasn't all COVID-y?
Yeah, no, when it wasn't all the things that it was, right? I mean, it's an older restaurant. It's plush inside. It's very old style.
How was the wait staff? They had employees?
Yeah.
Or was it the guy who parked your car also brought you the steak?
Well, we were actually eating in the where what used to be the the valet parking area. So, but the food was all at the same quality. It was hard. So there's a lot of parts to this meal, right? Especially when there were 6 of us, and so it being out front like that is a long way from the kitchen, right? So it was multiple trips. So it took a little while for the waiter to get all the food out there. So that wasn't ideal. I mean, you really want all this stuff at the same time. But there did come a point where finally everything was there: the corn, the Yorkshire pudding, but the meat was outstanding. Just so good. And
it was worth going into a COVID hotspot and dealing with all the bullshit to have the prime rib for your birthday.
This is Beverly Hills, right? The city of Beverly Hills. And so you're going to get there off the 10 freeway. One way or the other, you're going to have to get onto La Cienega Boulevard just off the 10. I think you take San Vicente or something and then get on La Cienega if that's the way you're going. And from the 10 freeway, there's a fair amount of real estate. Well, you're in the city of LA, you're not in Beverly Hills. That was a complete and total shithole. Complete with the homeless crap on the sidewalk, bad. Right? And so that wasn't good. And then the city of LA under Mayor Yoga Pants, they're not. I mean, you've got the homeless living there, but then just in general, they're not. The city's not cutting any of the weeds on, that are growing up in the cracks in the sidewalks. They're just not doing.
And they're growing
shit.
at a faster pace because of all the piss,
I
fueling
can
the
only
weeds.
imagine, And so that was all disappointing. And as you're driving up La Cienega, and I've driven up that street hundreds of times. I grew up in Inglewood. I worked on La Cienega Boulevard at Centinela, La Cienega Centinela, and I used to go up there to get in trouble, on the weekends and stuff. And from the gas station that I worked at there, Centinela and La Cienega. So I've driven up La Cienega 1,000 times, and it's so much worse.
How many people do you think were out there?
At the restaurant?
No, the homeless people.
Oh, there were, on that stretch on the right-hand side, which is what I could really see, we ran into a 2-block stretch of tents and stuff. And so, who knows? They're there for a long time, right? They're not, they apparently are doing nothing in LA about it. And so.
Are they doing anything about it anywhere?
In Orange County, when you see people with their homeless crap on the sidewalk, it's a small thing. They take a blue truck tarp or something and put it over their shopping cart, and that's it. And these are big.
Villages.
It's just.
Do they still have the up by Angel Stadium and the River Wash up there? Wasn't that a big homeless camp here in Orange County for a while? You know what I'm talking about?
What stadium?
Angel Stadium.
Oh, Angel Stadium. That huge encampment, which was ballpark 400 tents. And
did they move all those people to La Cienega Boulevard?
They moved them all out of there, right? And that's what I'm saying. Even that, as bad as that was, is almost nothing compared to what you see on the sidewalks in L.A. And I've been in other parts of L.A., recently, like Silver Lake and some other areas. But this is Hollywood, Beverly Hills. It's the Wilshire district. So it's quite the thing, though. As you're driving up, there's all that shit. There's the homeless people. There's the unkempt streets, the weeds that aren't being trimmed, and all that kind of stuff. The garbage is not being picked up, and then you see a sign that says Beverly Hills, and at that moment it changes.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's from there on to the rest of the way to the restaurant. It's clean and green, and it's awesome, right? That part. But I got to say, I don't think I'm going back anytime soon, unless I hear that there's been some. First off, I'm not going back to LA during COVID till this shit is somehow over.
It's never going to be over. Come on. Don't you realize that by now?
So everybody, like, when I get up there, everybody goes, oh, come on, you got to put on a mask. It's LA, the mask mandate. I go, well, we're standing outside. We're outside. Yeah, but everybody's wearing their masks. I don't give a fuck.
I think, finally you're starting to see the light, but I think that, was it Fauci over the weekend is saying even outdoors we should be wearing masks? And maybe he clarified it by saying COVID hotspots, but
What isn't a COVID hotspot?
I don't know. It's all ridiculous.
So there's my Lowry's prime rib story. It's really good. Go there if you can. There are other ones. They're in Las Vegas. They're in Chicago.
Yeah. So
and one other place I can't remember.
They, of course, you said they didn't give you the source of their meat, but you said something. It reminded me of an article I read over the weekend, and I don't know if this wasn't previously on my radar, but the article was basically saying that California, once again, because we've got our priorities completely straight, that I think there's some new law that starting in January, it's going to be harder to get bacon because the priority of the Democrats in California was to pass some bill that we give pigs more space to roam free, and I think it applies to chickens as well.
I heard something,
and maybe that part already came to be. I'm not sure, but
I think
this
the
article
chicken thing already started.
Yeah, I think so too. But this article, of course, I happen to see it in the morning while I'm eating my bacon, and it's like you're not going to have bacon next year because it's going to be more expensive, and to import it in here, they can't grow it, and they have to prove that it was these pigs were raised in a humane environment.
You're going to buy it anyway.
What are we doing?
Well,
what are we doing?
That part of it, we're going to do. We're going to buy the bacon when we want it. I don't look at the price now. I'm not going to look at it then.
But why is that a thing? Of all the problems we have, the homelessness, and I don't know, we can talk about that too, but the priority of fixing the homelessness and why it's the priority of the people in Beverly Hills versus L.A.
I am going to leave the treatment of animals for food to another generation. I'm just going to be upfront about it. I'm not facing the problem. I don't watch the documentaries. I'm not.
But you're the one who says, you know a lot about food and you know a lot about dieting. And that sounds funny, maybe. It does. For obvious reasons. But, you have said more than once that we don't need meat. You could live without meat. But you're kind of hoping that this doesn't happen until you go wherever you're going to go in the future.
Well, here's what I think. If the more the public sees stuff and hears stuff and learns stuff about the way food is processed, such as slaughterhouses and meat packing and things like that, they're going to want to eat it less because it is the way it's
not if you're starving.
The way it's currently done.
If you're starving, you don't give a shit. You're going to eat another human.
I get that, but nobody. I mean, really, for the most part, we're not starving. So.
And for the most part, people have no idea where their food comes from. They think it comes from the grocery store, and they don't
want
to
learn about it. I don't want to see it because I don't want to see pictures of my food in their animal form, wallowing in feces and 2 foot by 2 foot.
But especially with pigs, we know this about pigs that they are wallowing in their feces. But every part of a pig is fucking delicious.
Yes, there's
the
no doubt
feet,
about that.
The head, the ears.
I don't eat any of those.
Do you
eat any of those?
Of course,
pieces of the pig.
Absolutely.
Get out of here.
I've never been served a pig piece that I didn't like.
I would like to see a picture of you eating a pig ear.
I have.
Well, I've seen it cooked and shit on TV. So
I mean, what's wrong with raising animals for food? And if we're saying that pigs or any animals are equal to humans, this goes back to my moon theory. I always say, if a pig can put a man on the moon, then we'll start talking about treating pigs equally. But they can't.
Okay,
their purpose is to feed us.
I got some criticism over the weekend for being too happy on the podcast.
Is that right?
Yeah. So
that's what's keeping you young, my friend.
Well, I mean, I've made a conscious decision. Well, of course, we've changed a few things too. We typically record now on Mondays, and so that has had a very positive effect on me. I'm much. The weekend
nothing's happened yet. No bad shit during the week has happened.
The weekend always serves to kind of refresh and recharge me, even if it's not a good weekend. It's still better than typically Friday. By Friday, I am ready to just kill somebody at the slightest provocation. Most of the domestic squabbles Debbie and I have happen on a Friday after I come home and I'm just not in the mood, and then something goes wrong.
And the other thing that can spark you depends on what we talk about, and you certainly have your flashpoints and the things that you're passionate about. But if we're talking about things where we generally agree are pretty insane or stupid or one extreme to the other, then I guess that keeps you.
Well, we
never know where we're going to go.
That was also mentioned. It's like, hey, Travis is not pissing you off as regular as he used to. So is he doing that on purpose? And I said, I don't know. I think we both. I mean, we both would like to be a little happier rather than a little more upset. So, but I think we still tackle all the tough
Well,
issues,
I try to lead you with little jabs. So, for example, this pig problem is really a Democrat problem, right? No fucking Republican created this bacon ban, and that's usually where I try to lead you to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because my guess is that no Republican gives a shit how the animals are treated one way or the other.
Because they can't put a man on the moon.
There you go. If that's the criteria, I'm down with that. I mean, that phrase is just going to keep me laughing. I mean, when a pig can put a man on the moon.
Exactly.
So I saw some sculpture of pigs flying made out of the pigs were made out of gallon laundry detergent bottles or something, and it was on some kind of thing where it twirled around in the air, so the pigs looked like they were flying. And I'm like, okay, so that is
doesn't that mean anything's possible?
That is the artist concept of that phrase. When pigs fly.
When pigs fly. So there's something that's always attached to that.
Right.
This will never happen until pigs fly.
That's right. So I heard something about that. I thought there was some kind of pig shortage or something, but it's legislation, that they're referring to that's going to cause the bacon shortage
in California. But it just begs the question, and I've thought about it when you're talking about your meat source.
Right. But
what are our priorities? The other, maybe I can raise your blood pressure with this one, but the other big story in the news this weekend was the eviction moratorium, the eviction ban moratorium was set to expire.
Right.
And you brought up the congressional recess last week, I think over the infrastructure bill, but of course this was another thing that Democrats had hoped to get done.
They are in recess, right?
I think so, yeah. I think that happened.
They didn't get anything passed.
They don't get anything done really when they're together, so certainly they're not going to do it when they're in recess.
Oh, man, Merry Christmas. Again. No, so I tried to kind of look at this, but really it was, there was a lot going on at my house family-wise, so I didn't see much in the way of news. There was something about some kind of $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure package in the Senate that has some possibility of passing, which is far away, I think, from the original stuff, but probably what some kind of compromise bipartisan hard infrastructure bill will end up looking like. And
I thought 1 trillion was always the number.
It's like 4 trillion. Are you kidding? It's like 1.2 trillion. There was or 1.9 trillion just on his original
actual infrastructure, not the gimmies.
No, that was the original infrastructure with all the soft infrastructure too from Biden. But there are other bills. So when the other ones that they say, hey, they would put together a reconciliation bill, right? And then add that to the 1.9 trillion infrastructure. It was like three pushing $4 trillion. That's the Democrat spending wish list. I don't think that's going to happen. So there is evidently a proposal in the Senate for a bipartisan infrastructure bill, and I saw the breakdown on it. And of course, I couldn't memorize it, but
when you say when you say bipartisan, are we saying that basically means there's support on both sides to get the votes, or is it co-authored by the right and the left?
There's support by. When they say bipartisan bill in the Senate, I think they're talking about there's a bill that got voted out of committee, which usually means it's going to go on in the Senate, and that would take bipartisan support. So there's this other way they use the term bipartisan right now that the Democrats have been using the term, where it has nothing to do with do you have votes on both sides of the aisle in either the House or the Senate, where polling shows that a given bill is supported by both Republicans and Democrats in the public, and they're calling those bipartisan. It says so they'll typically say that has bipartisan support among the people. And that's completely different than bipartisan, congressional or senatorial. So I think it was encouraging. I mean, so here's how the Democrats are going to snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory, right?
Because we know that's going to happen.
Nancy Pelosi says that.
Did you call her Nazi?
Nancy Pelosi.
Nazi Pelosi.
Nancy Pelosi says that if she's not going to so this is a Senate bill. This is a Senate infrastructure bill that I'm talking about that had some forward movement, and they're saying is bipartisan in the Senate. If that ends up passing in the Senate, and it's a Senate originated bill, it has to go back to the House for, I think they call it conference or something. I don't know.
It's all ridiculous.
And then they would have to pick it up, and that's how it works, and vice versa. If it originates in the House and it has to go through the Senate. So Nancy Pelosi says, hey, she's not going to entertain this bipartisan infrastructure bill unless some of the other spending shit that Democratic Republicans want to do. So who knows? There's plenty of time for this to get fucked up. I think that in general, there's quite a bit of support among the people for infrastructure,
for bridges and roads. Yeah.
And I think there's support for the other stuff too. I mean, when you say non-traditional, talking about getting broadband out into the rural areas.
Well, that's one of those things
like
that I think you could make an argument why it is infrastructure. It's all the things that are not even indirectly related, like whether it was Medicare. I think some of that stuff was in there. There were some other things.
Other things.
You know,
There's
when you have
childcare.
Childcare, when there's stuff about, entitlements or shit to fix up museums or, whatever, it's like, let's get where are the priorities? I don't know.
Well, the priorities are roads and bridges. It's water quality, right? I mean, there's obviously, there's money in this bipartisan to fix all the lead pipes.
In the ancient world,
it's not for nothing that there are there are lead pipes in many of our cities that are disintegrating. When that happens, lead's released into the water. That poisons millions of children.
You've seen them. You've seen the people on TV that kind of, you could tell by their smile they've had
You're not going to give me the joke about
a lot of lead water. You know who I'm talking about.
You're not going to give me the joke about lead poisoning in the waters. Flint, Michigan was a disgrace to the country. So I think that, that's the kind of thing that we need to pull our collective heads out of our collective asses and realize it should not be a partisan issue, meaning, of course, that there should be bipartisan support to fix every fucking lead pipe in this country yesterday.
Well, and that goes back to priorities. There are things that I think everybody should agree that you need, one of which, it's like the first on the list, is water.
Water.
And then food. I think it's in that order. It's water, food, and then shelter. Those are the things that you need.
Yeah. You can only go a few days without water.
But what I was going to tell you, food. In ancient times, when there was no good quality water.
You mean when I was a child?
When you were a child, when you couldn't get good water, that's why people drank beer, because it was safer than the water. So if we find ourselves with a true water shortage of clean drinking water free of lead, and the only way to survive is to drink safe beer, would you go back to drinking beer?
I'm going to tell you a true funny story. When I was 12, I went on a 18-day trip to Mexico on a 45-foot catch, Ketch, I think is what they call it. Anyway, it's a type of boat, right? It's a type of sailboat. 2 masts, a main and a mizzen, and 45 foot, all wood.
Look at you, Captain Ron, knowing your stuff.
It had, it's got water tanks in it, right? So the guy I went with was a neighbor and his wife in the neighborhood, and I was 12, and they took me along so I could help crew a little bit, right? Because they're both in their mid-50s or something, and the wife was like, she couldn't coil a rope or do anything. She could cook, though, like crazy. So I go with them. First time away from home, and I'm thrilled to go. Bye. See you.
You're 12, you said?
Yeah, 12. My mom's like, are you going to be okay? Who are you? Goodbye. I got to go.
I'm already gone. I'm not coming back.
Don't take one good look, because this is my chance. And so his goal was to sell this boat eventually to, let me get this right, Jamaica. And so that's going to take, 3 months or something to get there. So with a stop in Hawaii. And, but I don't get to go on that trip. I got to go on that trip to fucking Ensenada.
Is that where you sailed out of?
Well, we left from Marina del Rey, and we sailed down to an island called Guadalupe Island. And you hear about it from time to time now. There are shark fishermen that live on that island a couple months out of the year during the season. They fish for shark out of long boats, and they hook them with boat hooks, and then they have motors on these long rowboats, long canoes.
Listen, the day a shark puts a man on the moon.
Yeah, it's the day you give a shit.
Yeah.
About. So it was cool. They brought these sharks up. They would drag them up onto the beach. They would club them to death in front of us, and then sometimes shoot them in the head. Then cut them up, and then cut them into their meat into square fillets, and hang them and dry them in the sun. Anyway, we sailed down there, and we stopped, made some stops on the way down. We stopped in Ensenada, and but when we were in Ensenada, well, here's the point of this. So one of the things he told me, he brought a bunch of beer in the bottles, and it was, I'm going to forget what it was. It was the beer that used to have little lucky things in the caps, and it was the cheap beer.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
God damn. Anyway, he brought a bunch of it, right? I'm 12, right? So
it didn't take much.
But he did let me drink beer because we drank some beer to see how far he could extend the water supply. So he was doing some testing.
And how far did he stretch it?
Well, I don't know. I never heard the results. So, I mean, a lot of great stuff on that
How
trip.
much beer did you drink?
I don't know. A few bottles along the way, one way or the other. You're out in the middle of nowhere, and, who's gonna say shit? My parents.
You got to save the beer for when you actually land in Ensenada because you can't drink the water down there, right?
Well, I don't know. You got to Ensenada. So here I am, 12, Ensenada. I'm running around the streets of Ensenada completely by myself. They didn't go with me. I have my own money. I'm running around. So here's what I'm buying. I was telling somebody the other day. So three things I bought: bottle rockets, which couldn't get here, a variety of switchblades,
Yeah, of course.
right, and then so it was a fat 12-year-old, right, and so I went into my first pandanderia, right, Mexican bakery, and my eyes popped out of my head, and I went on a spending spree and bought all this Mexican pastry, right. It wasn't, and no offense to all our Mexican friends, but the pastry is not as sweet as it looks. So I was a little disappointed, but it was still bread, and I still ate it. But,
it was a different time. Things were a lot safer back in the 50s.
Oh, yeah. I didn't do this by myself, but we went to Husong's. Back in when? When, asshole? Let's see, when was this? I was 12, so it was in the late 60s, I guess, right? And I went to Husong's Cantina, the real Husong's Cantina. So there's still a Husong's Cantina down there that people kind of know, but the real one was torn down. So now there's one in a strip mall, and it's not the same. Husong's Cantina was a freestanding piss house, bar down there. It was crazy. And so there is one now, but it's in the middle of, there's a laundromat next to it, or it's in a mall or something. But there's a popular place that's kind of taking a place down there called Papas and Beer. So anybody that goes down to Mexico,
Yeah, you got to go there.
Knows all that stuff. So yeah, those are interesting times. But yeah, stretch the water with the beer. 12. So I mean, I'm in Husong's Cantina at 12 years old, right? So that was awesome.
This is where you started your life of rock and roll, and
I don't think they bought me any beer in this bar.
Did anybody care? Could you just order beer if you wanted it?
I don't think so. I mean, we went there. I don't know why we went there. These people weren't heavy drinkers with us. I think it was more of a tourist thing. But I remember being in there. I remember, the pictures on the wall and, all these people in there. So, yeah, it was a pretty interesting trip. I did a lot of fun stuff for a 12-year-old, And we did some heavy-duty sailing. This is a big wooden boat with so it had big triangular sails, but it originally was outfitted with it was a gaff rig or square sails. So square sail different than a triangular sail. Square sail has a big piece of wood that goes out over the top of the sail,
like a pirate ship, right?
Well, I mean, they're gaff rig. You get more sail area out of a square sail. So this is a big, heavy wooden Japanese-built wooden boat, 45 foot long, and it needed that extra sail area to push it along. With the triangular sails, top speed was 5 knots, and it also had 2 Mercedes-Benz diesel engines in it, and top speed with those at full blast was 5
3
knots. Yeah, 3. I mean, once in a while, in heavy seas, the boat would go up on the wave, and you'd kind of surf down the front of it. You could go a little faster then, but that was about it. So it was a slow go, all the way down. I mean, I don't know. I can't remember now if Guadalupe Island was 300 miles from here or 300 miles from Ensenada. It was far down there, right? So yeah, it was
You
cool.
catch any sharks?
We didn't fish. He was a skin diver. He caught his limit of abalone every place he could along the way. So, and I was kind of a picky eater at 12, right? It was not a wide ranging. So, but I did eat some abalone, right? And so the only thing that didn't set well with me on that trip was we had a lot of abalone, which they were also trying to stretch the food supply, right? So, I had an abalone sandwich for lunch one day with more mayonnaise on it. That did not cut it. And then I was taking Dramamine, right? But that was I'm 12, right? So it's not like the lady. I was totally self-sufficient, you know. I mean, just take care of yourself. She wasn't there to be my mother, and so I irresponsibly did not take my Dramamine. This is a small boat. You're going to get seasick. I mean, unless you're completely immune, you have no balanced situation in your ears at all, you're going to get seasick if you don't take medicine. And I skipped it. And so one day, you know, we had pancakes for breakfast, and then around noon, you know, then I paid the price for not taking the Dramamine. So I learned.
You sure it wasn't the beer?
Well, who knows, right? Beer, warm mayonnaise, abalone sandwiches, lack of Dramamine, and 12 years old. So a lot of good decisions. Yeah, but that is truly where you want to die. You feel like you're going to die, and you certainly wish.
How long was this trip?
18 days altogether. So that was a long trip. And then, you know, over the next, so I was 12 then. So up until I was around 16 or something, I went on several more trips. I sailed with them out to the Channel Islands, Santa Barbara Islands, Catalina. We did a lot of fishing on those trips, right? Like for rock cod, you know what rock cod is? So they would put down fishing line with 6 hooks on it, and then rock cod are bottom feeders, and so then you pull them up. And the cool thing about these is there's a lot of pressure down there, so when you reel them up out of the water, their eyes and their guts pop out through their mouth. So they're these red fish with their eyes all popped out. And then the other cool thing, when you're fishing off, say, Catalina Island or Santa Barbara Island, there's a lot of sharks out there. So when you're bringing up 4 of these things on this line with 6 hooks, the sharks are going to hit your line if you're not careful. At the end, you got to really put some muscle into it and get them out of the water. Otherwise, because as they come up and they get their last 5 feet of the water, they're heavy, right? All of a sudden, there's no way.
You ever see any great whites?
No, you know, not that I would know. We did.
I think you would know, right?
I didn't even know what a fucking great white was back then. I mean, this was
before Jaws.
This was before television.
Yeah, what was Jaws, like 75?
Yeah, it was before Jaws. Yeah, this was a long time ago. And I'm going to say
pre-Jaws, maybe not. After Jaws, everybody knows what a great white is.
Right, exactly. And my 6-year-old nephew knows what a great white is, right? But there were sharks out there. I don't remember anybody calling them great whites. But we did catch them sometimes because they would hit this line with all these hooks in it, and they'd swallow the damn rock cod whole and then get hooked up on the line. So I remember one of these trips, there was a guy that hooked this thing, and he's like, "We're going to bring it on board. We're going to land it." And I'm like, "Wow, really? Why?" And so
shark fin soup.
They get the rifle out. They had a Winchester on the boat I didn't even know about. So they're going to shoot it, as soon as they can. And but then before they can get out of the water, the hooks break, right? The line is not strong. It's only set up. The line was only set up for the weight of 4 rock cod, which is not going to be 10 pounds, right? And then you get a 50-pound shark on that thing. It's not going to happen.
Did you guys fire the gun anyway?
No, they never shot the gun, but they did brandish it. I'm like, wow, what's going on? And
that's half the fun.
Yeah. So interesting stuff for a 12-year-old, And then I developed a prejudice. So I don't like stink potters. So that's these guys that have sailboats, right? That even though they have motors, and they have to use them about half the time because there's not always wind out there, and it's a big, heavy boat. You need some substantial wind to push it along with the sail. But there's nothing quite like turning off those twin diesel Mercedes-Benz engines and having the wind push that big-ass boat through the water. There's nothing quite like that, and that never happens on a power boat.
Exactly.
What I mean? Big fishing boat or something. So, Debbie goes.
Did you feel
out.
like a pilgrim out there?
No.
You're a colonist?
No. No. So when was this? So what year was this? So I was born in 56, so this had to be 68, right? So what I did hear out there all the way down to Mexico and back was a radio station called the Big XERB, which was Wolfman Jack 24 hours a day on a tape. So that's a real thing. So for those of you that saw American Graffiti, and Wolfman Jack was in that movie, and he was out in a radio station and eating melting popsicles because the refrigerator broke, and they go out and see him out there. That's the real Wolfman Jack, and he's telling the character.
Where did he broadcast from?
Howard. Well, it was theoretically Wolfman Jack was broadcasting from a pirate radio from a ship somewhere off the coast of California, off the coast of Mexico. I mean, it really wasn't. He was somewhere in San Diego or something, right?
Close enough.
But they said it was a pirate radio, so it was one of the what they call pirate radio. So it's all legend, you know. And here's the thing: it's 24 hours a day, right? He's on a loop, and he had. I mean, have you ever heard of Wolfman Jack?
I've heard of him. Yeah.
Have you ever heard his voice?
I don't recall.
You ever go watch American Graffiti? You can see him in real life. But yeah, it was cool. And they, that station played. I wanted to hear The Who or something, right? They played.
This is on an AM frequency, right?
Yes,
had to be if you could hear it all the way from
AM pirate radio.
Yeah.
It was the only thing. It was the only station you could get out there. So that the theory there was that they were broadcasting on super illegal, powerfully illegal radio station or something, right? So that was kind of fun, I'd be out in the, we still along the
But
coast.
did your rebel self enjoy it back then? Like, was that lost on you, or did you think it was kind of cool?
Totally got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally got it. Yeah. No, I thought it was awesome. And then when I saw American Graffiti, I'm like, oh, fuck, there's Wolfman Jack. I heard him, And then I come to learn, I mean, it was all taped and stuff, so it was pretty interesting. Yeah, there's no other radio station that would come in out there, only that stupid radio station. So as we were heading for Mexico, it was easy to believe he was broadcasting from a ship somewhere off the coast of Mexico.
So that was the legend of the tale at the time?
That was the legend, yeah.
You guys didn't go looking for a ship?
Mm-mm. I mean, the people I sat with didn't give a shit. They probably liked Lawrence Welk or something, right? They're 50 in 1968, right? So their musical taste did not run to, 50s rock and roll, which is what they played. Well,
hey, speaking of things that the Democrats fuck up,
which obviously all of that was about that.
You mentioned, what did you say? They had a rifle or a shotgun or something on the boat, the Winchester.
Yeah.
Let's go down the gun control path. There was another article I saw this weekend. I think it was Remington.
The shark was in favor of gun control, just so you know.
Of course, absolutely. Actually, in the movie Jaws, the first Jaws, I think the way that he meets his demise is they shoot him. Doesn't he eat an oxygen tank?
Yeah,
and then he's got it in his mouth, and then they shoot the tank out with
shoot it with a gun.
With maybe their
I think it was a Winchester.
Maybe their Winchester, and he explodes, and shark guts fly everywhere.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a air tank. I guess it was an oxygen tank.
Yeah, it was a scuba tank.
Yeah, they don't use oxygen. You don't use oxygen. That's the thing, right? You don't use oxygen to scuba dive, right? When you want to blow up, you want to blow yourself up.
Well, I think it was the dive tanks, right? Maybe they had other shit on the boat.
I'm pretty sure it said oxygen. I can almost remember seeing it.
It probably didn't have the green diamond, back then.
It's just stenciled. It said oxygen. It was probably an acetylene tank or something from a welder, right? Oh my God. Yeah, gun control.
Did you see this story though? This is a real story. I think it was Remington that they made an offer to settle with. I want to say it was the Sandy Hook families, couple million apiece for the victims' families. For the settlement because either their guns or their ammunition was used in that. God, when was that one? Like the most recent school one?
Sandy Hook one. I don't know.
I think it was.
I have no chronology.
I know it's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah, but that makes. I mean, so as a gun control advocate, you must be sad that they're kowtowing to that. Huh?
Well, I'm one of these guys that I have a lot of guns. And I'm also in favor of background checks, and
keep yourself off that list, brother.
No, and this is, I think, what gets lost a lot in the conversation these days is if you're for one thing in particular, you can't also be for the other thing because there's this line that's drawn in the sand that you're either with us or against us, and it's not always that way. And I don't think it is in the real world, but the politics of this country have become so.
So you think Remington is doing the right thing?
Well, no, on that part I disagree. So I don't know the specifics as to whether or not it was the settlement was accepted, if it needs to go through some type of court process. I thought I read that the offer was, say, $3 million a piece, something like that. And I think we've talked about this before, but
they're not going to get $3 million from anybody else for any of those.
But here's the thing. What I read was interesting, and I wanted to pick your brain on this.
Yeah,
but for me, I just think it's ridiculous that the firearm manufacturer or the ammunition manufacturer, and in this case maybe they're one and the same, is somehow liable or responsible in any way, shape, or form. And the analogy I give is in a vehicle accident. If somebody uses a Toyota to plow through the crowd of, whatever, any people, it's not Toyota's fault. Like, would Toyota ever get brought into the lawsuit? I'm not talking about failing brakes or your old, what were the cars that the gas tanks caught on fire back in the day when the tanks were in the back of the car?
Wasn't it the, no, see, that was the engine in the back of the car.
Oh, I thought it was the fuel tank.
No, I was thinking
what I'm
the
talking
Corvair.
about.
I was thinking of the Corvair. It's not
the Pinto, wasn't it? The Pinto?
Yeah, it was the Pinto.
So if there's some type of, manufacturer's defect, but if somebody goes and buys a firearm or ammunition lawfully and then uses it in a heinous crime, is that just an easy target? I mean, you have to wonder, just like insurance, right? If you have insurance and you're sued, somebody drowns in your pool or breaks into your house or whatever, they always sue for the maximum insurance limits because that's what you have. You and I, we were talking about something last week, about somebody being brought into a lawsuit, and the chances are likely that the suit would be for the maximum amount that any attorney thought that they could reasonably collect. So I just scratch my head on this stuff. Are they the easy target because, it's the big, gun people, it's the NRA, they have the money, maybe they'll settle, but why is it their responsibility to pony up the money?
So I see a bunch of questions here, right? Has this ever happened? I mean, has any gun or ammunition manufacturer ever paid out on one of these things?
I don't know.
To your knowledge? Okay.
Probably.
That's just a curiosity question for me. So the real question you're asking is it right? Is there a real justification for that? I got to be honest with you. And now, people are not going to like this, but I may agree with you on this. I don't see where the gun or the ammunition manufacturer, it should be particularly liable for this, right? Because, let's think about this for a second. And do we know what kind of guns were used, right? So, if this is just some kind of normal gun.
Let's say it's an AR-15, the killing machine weapon that has the Democrats are up in arms about.
Well, me personally, I don't see why the average person even has access to that kind of a gun, right? I can see guns for hunting. I can see guns for
that's the other talking
stuff
point,
like that, right? Target practice or something, but you don't target practice with an AR-15.
You do.
It's
fun as hell.
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't. I'm not. Again, I think we've talked about this a bunch of times. Guns are not a big deal for me. I hardly even see it as a partisan kind of thing. My guess is that there's probably more Republicans that like guns than Democrats, but I'm sure there are quite a few, I'm sure there are millions, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Democrats that own guns. I think this has more to do with where you grew up, where you live, than it does with your politics, right? I think in urban Southern California, there are less guns than in rural Kentucky, but there are certainly guns in Southern California. So
here's the other piece that was in this story, and I don't know if it has an impact on the outcome, but they cited something about the negligence on advertising, and it didn't give the details, or I didn't really read it all the way through. But if a gun manufacturer, if they're marketing the tool as a death machine, as a weapon of mass destruction, or whatever the catchphrase is, does that change the equation for you?
Well, I think that for the people that are involved in these issues, right, I think there is some desire to somehow link this to the tobacco manufacturers, so that where big tobacco has lost every one of these cases.
So that's the precedent?
I think so. And the next one that is probably, I think, on the verge of being hammered are the opioid manufacturers.
Yeah, I was going to say Big
right?
Pharma. They've settled on a lot of these already.
So I think that that's where I think that's where some of the fuel for the lawsuits come from. Somehow they're trying to link it to the same kind of cases that big tobacco lost and big pharma has lost and will probably continue to lose here in relation to the opioid crisis. Because the same kind of arguments can be made, right? Hey, how is it the drug manufacturers' fault that people decide to misuse, opioids and become addicted? But then, there's a lot. So this is where advertising comes in, right? So
like these little mini movies, drug commercials that we see on TV.
What do we see on TV? I mean, I'm going to just say that for my money, no prescription drug should ever be advertised on television. And I don't know that there's much OxyContin advertising going on TV. I don't think so. There certainly is advertising for various kinds of, psychotropic or mood enhancing drugs, that kind of thing. But it's hard to know, which ones are which unless you're already in that boat, but Elavil or something, But I don't know. I mean, even there are legitimate uses for most of these drugs. I mean, right now we're in a space with, hey, and wait, trust me, and I've already been here, and we had a little bit of discussion about this because a family member has had some pain issues and was completely denied any kind of decent medication, right? It's like,
what kind of pain?
Take bad pain.
Where?
And I think it's back pain or something, right? And he was just, well, take Motrin, right? And I've had a bunch of work done, everybody, longtime listeners know all the wooden tea stories, which will be coming to a conclusion here soon. And when I've had teeth extracted and stuff, there's some real pain involved with that. And
don't they give you real stuff now?
Well, here's the thing. I came away from the first one of these where I had a couple teeth extracted, I had bone grafts done, and the pain was fucking unreal. And they wanted me to take Motrin, right? And I worked in a pharmacy for a couple of years. I know a fair amount about drugs. And, ibuprofen, which is Motrin, and, the Advils and aspirin and Tylenol, these are analgesic painkillers. They're not very strong. And past minor pain, they don't do jack shit. And so, when you cut into somebody's jaw, cut their gums open and cut into the bone, and do that stuff, that's not going to be enough.
Yeah, I think dental pain and back pain, those two are like really high on the pain scale.
Right. So when I had my first, surgery.
Aside from giving birth, which I know nothing about.
Right.
The ladies have us beat always.
You'd have to give me straight heroin for that. So, I had this really bad pain, and I thought I was going to, because when I left the dentist office, I was all numbed up. Right?
But can you ask for it now? Can you ask for the good stuff?
I mean, when you start asking for painkillers, they call that drug seeking, right? And
do they? I mean, if it's a known procedure that it's all documented.
When I had this this first oral surgery, and I went home, and once all the painkiller, the anesthetic wore off, the pain was untenable. And so we were able to call them and get some painkiller, and even that was not stuff I'd had in the past. So the typical painkillers for dental work have always been, a lot of Tylenol and codeine, or aspirin and codeine, or whatever. And codeine was the tip, which is a really mild form of, what is the word? I was just saying it. Not heroin, but opioids, right? Codeine is a very mild opiate, but it's still an opiate, right? And so the doctor was very, very reluctant because of what's happened with the opioid.
But because the doctor's afraid of lawsuits?
I think that...
Or the doctor's looking out for you?
Well, here's how it was explained to me. And nothing against my doctor, great guy. I think if, all things being equal, he would have preferred to give me a painkiller that would have stopped the pain,
Yeah.
or brought it down to a point that was manageable, and it was far from that. I think that the deal is, and here's what I found out since that episode, is that dentists and all doctors are being watched very, very closely
by drug seekers.
Well, by the DEA, right? So you can end up under investigation, and you can be in a world.
Why do we have
hurt.
the DEA?
The Drug Enforcement Agency?
Why do we need that?
Well, I think we need it not because I give a shit whether people take drugs, for recreational purposes, but I mean, the fact is that that big pharma drug manufacturers have been irresponsible, right? For their own profit and gain, they promoted the overuse of opioid painkillers among doctors. And it would be the DEA and other regulatory agencies that need to oversee that and stop that from happening. So look, there are things. So the pendulum has swung so that now, even when you legitimately should be given some painkiller for short-term
you can't
use,
get it.
It's hard to get, right?
Exactly.
So you have to go to the extreme to get it, right? And it's just not right. And so, but what was happening is so the manufacturers of OxyContin in particular, I'm going to forget the name of that company, but it's known, right? There's a main manufacturer. They put millions and thousands of drug reps into doctors' offices around the country and the world to promote the use of OxyContin for pain situations where it wasn't appropriate, and for time periods where it wasn't safe, where it promoted addiction, and then did nothing.
Who approves the drugs, though, in that case? So the drugs that the salesmen are in the doctor's offices selling, these are fully FDA approved drugs.
Yeah, these are controlled substances, right? To write a prescription in the past for that.
So what's really the problem? So go back. The research has been done. It's FDA approved. So whatever the main target for these drugs is, it's proved to be efficacious. It does what it's supposed to do. And then the doctors, they are not schooled on this particular drug or treatment, and they just push it off as the next best thing because the salesman is putting pressure on them. So where do the doctors need more training? Where is the collapse in the chain? I mean, so the patient has got the hole in his jaw. He needs medication to get through it. And if the drug does what it's supposed to do and knock down the pain, you should have access to it. And if the doctors just overprescribed it or were too loosey-goosey when you came in 6 months later and said, "Hey, doc, I still need a little bit more to get me through this pain."
6 months later off your oral surgery. So let me do my best with that. That's a little bit of stuff. So my personal opinion is that dental uses are probably shouldn't be in this bucket, right? Most uses for dental reasons are going to be very short term, and I don't see a reason in the world why you can't use some kind of codeine or Vicodin type, synthetic codeine drug for pain control after a dental procedure like oral surgery. Right?
But didn't they used to only give you like 5 or 10 pills to get you through that?
Right, exactly. Or maybe even, and this is the problem, right? So, you see a lot of prescriptions from dentists for 30 painkillers, right? For something that should be over in, a couple of days.
Yeah,
right?
And then don't do any refills on it.
Right. And so, I think that's part of the problem. But I think the bigger part of the problem are more chronic pain situations where people develop back problems or have injuries or suffer trauma and then come away from that trauma with a condition where you're going to have chronic pain. And then, they give them painkillers, and so I think what's happened is over the years they've given them OxyContin because the manufacturers have told the doctors that these formulations and of this, unlike older, I mean, there's always been painkillers. Opioid painkillers not new. I mean, there has been all kinds of these for a long time. OxyContin, new name, new marketing, new formulation, supposedly, and the way it was promoted to the doctors through their drug reps and their advertising and their literature and all this shit. And
let me ask you an honest question: do you think that this is all? What's the word I'm looking for? Is this all in an attempt to sell more drugs and they know the adverse effects, or is there some type of innocence in those early years, which is, hey, we want to sell this drug because we believe it's the next best thing and it'll really cure your ailments, and so take it, and then the aftermath of the addiction is not known?
No, I know.
You think that's all in the documents?
Specifically with OxyContin, that particular drug manufacturer just seemed to be just greed. I mean, they virtually, I mean, the uses, all painkiller prescriptions kind of went by the wayside in favor of OxyContin because, and this is where I was going with the last thing I was saying, they tried to tell doctors that OxyContin did not have the habit-forming characteristics of other drugs that have been around for a long time, like different codeine drugs and what's the other one that so many?
Purdue Pharma.
Purdue,
by the way.
Yeah, Purdue Pharma is the one. And so Percodan was a long time opioid, and you would hear that there's Percodan, and then there was Percocet, and that's Percodan and Tylenol, which is acetaminophen, right? So Percocet, that's acetaminophen combined with Percodan. Why the fuck you do that? I don't know. They've always done that, right? There's always been aspirin, codeine, analgesics combined with different, but those were all, and those were well known. Percodan's well known as a habit-forming, long-term use painkiller. You're going to get addicted. So Purdue came out with all kinds of nonsense about how OxyContin was not habit-forming.
Are there drugs that are not habit-forming?
There are no opioid drugs that are not habit-forming. I mean,
nothing in the opioid. What about legitimate painkillers that?
They're all opioids, right? There are only opiates and synthetics that I'm aware of, right? So there are some synthetic.
And they're all
addicting.
All addicting.
Yeah, so analgesic painkillers like aspirin and acetaminophen and ibuprofen, and those by the brand names Tylenol and
Advil
and Motrin and stuff. They don't inset painkillers. So there's other things with insets, right? And those are off the market. So there was a class of drugs in between aspirin and opioids that were called NSAID, and they were effective painkillers, in between, right? So when it's too much for aspirin or Tylenol or Motrin, you didn't have to go right to habit-forming opioids, whatever they were named, OxyContin and all the rest, Percocet, and these insects caused heart failure, right?
So let me ask another, which seems like it should be an obvious question. Where is the FDA in line of culpability here?
Well, I don't think they're anywhere in the line of culpability.
What do you think,
right?
though? I mean, if they're the ones approving it.
The FDA, but they didn't approve it for what's the right word? The advertising, the way that these drugs were brought out and marketed to physicians that's what's wrong. Not the FDA authorization for the drugs. They authorize them for what they are.
But clearly, the FDA would have information on whether it's addictive.
They all come with 2-week ballpark. Hey, do not take this drug for more than 2 weeks.
Is that what they say?
Yeah, but then like Purdue Pharma and OxyContin, those people would be coming to the physicians going, "We know it says don't take it for 2 weeks, but that's CYA by the FDA." they're just trying to cover their ass. You could take this safely if you regulate, monitor, blah blah blah, blah, and then everybody ends up. And then here's the other thing. It's the public too, right? I mean, we like to talk about some personal responsibility here. So, here's something that I know from being in the business just a little while, and we should all know this. There's another type of drug that we need to be concerned about the way doctors prescribe them. That's antibiotics, right? So nothing habit-forming about antibiotics or anything, except you can build up resistance to antibiotics, right? And we're practically there. I mean, there are several chronic diseases and bacterial infections that we almost have no antibiotics left for because they've been overprescribed and the general populace has built up a resistance.
So are you saying you've got to have some type of treatment that includes natural remedies?
Yeah, here's the thing. Doctors are faced with, when you have people that are sick, they come in with...
Doctors don't know. They Google it. Do you ever go to the doctor recently? They literally Google what your ailment is?
Absolutely. But here's the thing. So when they are faced with people that have chronic pain or are sick with some type of, a lot of these are viruses, right, that people have. The people want some kind of medication. So the two classes are people that have pain, they want painkillers. And people that are sick, that have viral infections, they want medicine to make it better. So doctors incorrectly yield to the pressure from the public
Meaning
to give them pills. Yeah, patients come in and they should often leave with this advice. Hey, go home, drink plenty of fluids, eat some food, and rest, and it'll be gone in a week.
No, I thought the advice was take 2 of these and call me in the morning.
Well, exactly. And here's the thing. People come in, they go, well, I want some medicine, right? Even though the right prescription would be let your viral infection run its course.
Like with COVID?
Well, not with COVID, right? But so...
Well, go back to this antibiotic thing because I'm curious. When you said that there's too many we've overused antibiotics, and so therefore
there's resistance.
Are you talking about within the individual patient, or just in general as germs spread, we've overused antibiotics?
Yeah, in the populace, because bacteria adapts, right? And so, we see this in our field of choice. It's called pesticide resistance, right? So there just are times. So especially because here's what's happened. In the populace, this is part of the problem too, because people just think they're smarter than they really are. They are correctly prescribed antibiotic for some kind of illness, and then that illness is starting to run its course.
But how do you decide?
Let me finish. With that illness is starting to run its course, and they decide to stop taking them and save the pills for the next time. That causes the bacteria that you were killing with that medicine to become stronger. And so that over time has caused a lot of this problem.
Yeah, they always tell you, even if you feel better in 5 days, take it to the end, 10 days.
And there's a reason for that, right? And so...
But how do you decide then I get your point, and I think, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but in general, I try not to take anything if I don't need it. If I take anything even for mild or moderate pain, it's because I feel like I need it and it's not going to get better on its own or whatever. Like
what kind of pain would you take?
I tweaked my neck really bad on Friday, and
doing judo or whatever.
I was training, and I, just accident, kind of typical thing. But I couldn't even look to the right. I mean, not even a few degrees. And so just on Advil all weekend, twice a day Advil regimen, and here 3 days later I feel 80% better. But it was to the point where sitting.
But Advil had nothing to do with that.
Well,
did it make you feel better during those 3 days, or did it hurt like hell the whole 3 days?
It was to the point where when I was resting, it was tolerable.
Because of the Advil?
I think so. Okay, yeah, because if I wasn't, even the weight of my head, which I have a small peanut head, even the weight of my head was enough to where the pressure on my neck was causing me pain and discomfort to where I couldn't rest. I couldn't
but here's
sleep.
The thing. Taking Advil for 3 days, the only thing you're at risk is having some kind of stomach issue.
Yeah.
Right?
But here's the point. and I think you correctly identified it. 3 days later, the mobility in my neck is back and the pain has subsided, not because of the Advil,
Right.
but I didn't want to go through those 3 days without that because of the discomforts that it added in the additional pain and the lack of sleep and rest.
Right. So, I mean, here's really the question. You injured your neck one way or the other, and the pain was tolerable, especially if you took Advil. So no stronger medicine was required.
Tequila. I didn't mention that.
Yeah, that'd be fine. It wouldn't be appropriate for that kind of injury to take 3 days worth of opium.
No, I get that. But
Right.
but the point is, I made a decision that I was going to add something else personally to my regimen to get me through it.
Uh-huh.
So go back to the antibiotic situation. Let's say you're not feeling well, you're sick. Who gets to decide when you call the doctor and say, give me something to make this go away, or ride it out for the next 2 weeks and it'll go away on its own?
Well,
where should we draw that line to guide people to figure that part out?
Theoretically, to be honest with you, doctors should never prescribe antibiotics without a test. Right?
Like, well, how do you do that?
You take a swab and see if there's a bacterial infection.
Is that how they used to do it?
That's how they do it. I mean,
Is it?
Yeah, but they will often prescribe antibiotics without doing that.
Just as you describe your symptoms.
Yeah, I mean,
How long does it take to get the swab results back?
Well, it can take. I mean, it depends how you do it, right? It could take a couple of days.
I don't think I've ever had. I mean, not in the last 10 years that I have been given a prescription for antibiotics, had any type of swab to positively confirm what I have.
I understand that. And how do you sometimes tell the difference between a viral infection and a bacterial infection? Antibiotics for viral infections, that's completely wrong. But I think that's what happens. People get cold or virus infections, and they go to their doctor, and the doctor gives them antibiotics. And the theory there is, well, the antibiotics are to prevent your viral infection from becoming a bacterial infection, such as pneumonia, right? So you get a bad bronchial infection or something, bronchitis, and it turns into, and you get some fluid in your lungs, and that fluid isn't clearing, and bacteria builds up, and now you have a bacterial infection, which is pneumonia. And so they're going to give you antibiotics for that. Now, most often, right, there's no real need for the antibiotics. Most of the time when people call a doctor and say, hey, I'm sneezing and, I got some phlegm and this and that, they should just be telling you to
take NyQuil,
drink fluids.
But what are we saying? We're throwing the entire medical community under the bus. What are we saying? The doctors are they taking the shortcuts?
Yeah. I mean, they are running businesses, and they have patients, and the patients pressure them to do things, and they sometimes do it when they shouldn't. So, they can't, they don't have the time. I mean, Travis, this goes to a bigger discussion, right, that we've never really had. And I'm sure you would agree that most of the medical system is broken, right? So because of the way things are set up and the way it's medicine for profit and so forth, right? There's just no way that they can do the steps they need to do to distinguish when they should be giving antibiotics. And painkillers are a whole different story. I mean, I think that typically when people develop problems that result in chronic pain, the doctors give them, we know that the doctors give them painkillers long enough for them to become somehow addicted. And
do you think, is it your belief that most people in this country that are addicted to opiates start with a prescription some way or another?
Yeah, if they're not recreational drug users, right, to begin with. So, there's another path to opioid use, right, that starts with your gateway drug, marijuana, and different drugs that could take you there, right? There's nothing that feels quite like, opioid, getting high from heroin or something of that nature the first time. And then that's where the phrase chasing the dragon comes from, right? It's never as good as the first time. And so, but people will take it enough times to get addicted from a recreational use, right? Smoking heroin in small amounts, and I can control it that way, right? You almost always end up shooting it in your vein one way or the other. But the other path to addiction for this is through chronic pain control, and then people, because what'll happen is the doctor will cut them off. They're like, hey, you've been taking this for 6 months. You shouldn't take it anymore. But doc, my pain is still there. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I mean, here's the unfortunate thing. Some injuries, some diseases are going to result in chronic pain. If your doctors are not going, reputable doctors are not going to continue to prescribe opioids for you forever, because that's going to get you addicted. Right?
So what's the balance between not over-prescribing it, not overusing it, and losing it as a tool when you legitimately need to use it?
Where because this went crazy, especially in certain parts of the country, and Purdue Pharma promoted it so heavily nationwide amongst doctors, it got out of hand. And so now the knee-jerk pendulum swing, overreaction from the public and the regulatory, is to threaten legitimate doctors within an inch of their license for using it.
I know, it's crazy. Look at this cycle we just described, where you have poison peddlers by way of the drug manufacturers, with high-priced salespeople going into doctors' offices, right, and taking people out for a round of golf and Cuban cigars, and by the way, prescribe these pills. Your patients are going to love it.
Exactly.
And then the patients take it, they overuse it, and then you go get it on the street. Then we got the DEA involved to go in there and knock on these guys' doors and crack. I mean, what a fucking world we live in.
Well, once you get addicted to opioids, it's easier to get heroin on the street than it is a continuous supply of actual brand name, OxyContin or whatever. Plus, OxyContin, in the way it was manufactured, right, was rife for abuse, right? The way most people...
What's not rife for abuse, though? Everything...
Well, listen, heroin, takes a little bit of work, right? You got to take the heroin, you got to put it in a spoon, you got to melt it down, you got to take a syringe, you got to stuff it.
It does seem like a lot of goddamn work.
Right? Or you can take a couple of OxyContin and grind them up in a mortar and pestle, which every cook has in their kitchen, and then just snort it through a straw. And, it works fine like that, right? And you get...
Are you saying that if we had the OxyContin that was only administered in the doctor's office where they had to inject you, would that be a safer method?
Well, it would be safer. You give somebody 30 OxyContin in a bottle, right? You've given them enough OxyContin to get absolutely fucking blasted, multiple times, right? And then they're out before they should be out, and then they get that refilled a couple of times until the doctor probably says, hey, what are you doing with these pills? You should not be, because they're not taking them for pain. They start to figure out that they're getting high from them, and then they're addicted, and then, at some point they don't get high anymore, so they're going to crush up another pill.
So where do you start to break this cycle? I asked you this question a couple weeks ago about religion. Could we just wipe away religion overnight? And you made this argument why that would be bad.
Yeah.
What about the DEA? If we got rid of the DEA overnight, does that make things worse? Are they really part of this problem?
The Drug Enforcement Agency itself? Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I'm qualified, to be honest.
But I'll just take it up a level. I'm just saying, I don't dispute anything that you're saying as far as these drugs being overprescribed, overused, addicting. But let's just ask the question: is it the government's responsibility to monitor that?
Well, the DEA is really about illegal drugs, sources. So I do think that. Let me think here for a second. I suppose that it is the DEA that monitors Schedule I drug prescriptions, and so, as the PR for the opioid crisis across the country, as that shit hit the proverbial fan, I'm sure it is the DEA that is monitored. Because
were all those drugs Schedule I from the beginning?
Oh, yeah.
The actual doctor prescribed?
Yeah, they're all. So they so this type of drug, all of the OxyContin and all of it, all had to be written on what they call triplicate prescriptions. So, typically these kind of you can't call in a prescription for heroin so there's all kinds of opioids, right? There are really heavy duty opioids like Dilaudid, which you only give to a terminally ill patient to kill pain, right? Morphine in a real pure form to control, their pain in hospice, right? Things like that. Those are drugs that you're never going to go in and hurt your back and then, hey, I'm going to give you a prescription. I'm going to give you a prescription for 20 Dilaudid, right? Nobody's
with
going
those
to fill
patients,
that for you.
I'm just curious, can you actually monitor, whether it's through their brain waves or something, the real level of pain the patient is experiencing?
Not that I know of.
Like if I ask you what they say, tell me how bad it is, 1 to 10.
Yeah.
If you're an addict, you're going to say it's an 11.
Where's your pain on a scale of 1 to 10?
Is there a way to figure that out scientifically?
I don't think so. Honestly, I don't. I mean, I think every hospital emergency room deals with drug-seeking addicts coming into emergency to say they're in pain and, hey, I just need a few pills to get me through the night, and then I'll go see my doctor. And I think right there they're going to identify you as a
I know, but I guess there's got to be a more scientific approach. I mean, if you go into a hospital with your foot cut off,
I think, then they know
you're going to look at that and say that's probably pretty painful.
Well,
that's going to be a 10, and we'll give them something.
That's my thing about having oral surgery, right? And then giving somebody, saying, hey, here's a prescription for 500 milligram Motrin. 500 milligram Motrin instead of 100 milligram Motrin. Am I supposed to be impressed, or is my fucking hole in my jaw supposed to be
What
impressed?
if you put it in the hole in your jaw?
You know what? I think.
What if you put it in your asshole?
Honestly, if you are giving a prescription, if you have oral surgery, and the doctor gives you a prescription for 500 milligram Motrin, do yourself a favor, take a couple of aspirin, crush them up in a mortar and pestle, and stick them into that hole. That will kill the pain. That will give you more pain relief than the fucking ibuprofen. But aspirin will kill pain like that, right? If you have a toothache, you can chew aspirin and get pain relief from that. You can't chew up Motrin and get pain relief. It's a different drug. Aspirin is the miracle drug.
How do we balance using these drugs in a correct and responsible way? Like, you mentioned something, Schedule 1. There's more and more stories in the news about psychedelics being used for medical treatment, which of course, LSD, magic mushrooms, all that stuff. But can you imagine?
You are fixated on the drugs today.
Well, it's fascinating, it just.
I do know a little bit about it, so.
I think it's John Hopkins, however the hell you say it.
John Hopkins, yeah.
University. I think they're doing some medical trials with psychedelics.
Yeah. Where do you think LSD came from? I mean, LSD came out of laboratory, experiments for psychiatric uses, right? And this. This kind of shit is where, our discussion in a previous, maybe, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, where we talked about how people of color may have been used by the government for
trials in medical research.
Yeah, for venereal disease, right? But there are also the stories of the LSD trials on black soldiers by the CIA or whoever, of course that was all done without their knowledge, and it wasn't done on white soldiers; it was done on black soldiers, and without their permission or knowledge, and just so yeah, and then and I'm pretty sure that the psychedelic drug research is continuing, right?
It is, and there's some pretty legitimate research that's coming out now. That things like what is it? Psilocybin is one of the actives in the mushroom, and they're saying things like a single treatment can completely rewire the brain for things like PTSD, end of life stress,
right?
Really, major.
That's how
shit.
I'm planning to do with my end of life stress.
But and it's just in its early stages. If you want to make the comparison to marijuana, how we've evolved to that being legal for recreational use in a lot of states, we're way off from that. But it does beg the question, we've got the Schedule 1 classification where those drugs can't be used because they're dangerous. and they're being done in clinical trials and under the observation of the professionals. But, who's to say who should monitor that?
Yeah, well, that's who Timothy Leary was, right?
Yeah,
He was a professional
researcher.
researcher.
Wasn't he a Harvard guy?
I think so. And then he decided
tune in, tune on, drop out.
Yeah. Tune in, turn on, and drop out.
He was cast aside, basically shunned by the professional community back in that time for all the shit he was saying. But it's funny how the cycle comes back around.
I think he wasn't actually very professional about it. Using LSD to get chicks is not really the research that you want to be doing. I think that this conversation kind of sparked off the gun liability thing, right? And so, is there a straight line? Is there any line between the two? And so, to bring this a little bit back to the beginning, I think that the liabilities that are there for drug manufacturers and doctors that don't prescribe, prescription drugs in the correct way, and then results in then has bad results, whether that's addiction or whatever it is. I think that there's liability for them. Now, should there be liability for gun manufacturers or ammunition manufacturers?
Are they addicting?
Well, I don't think that comes into this equation. Good question, but you would know the answer better than me.
Kind of is, actually.
But I think
it's only addicting when there's Democrats in office, because then everybody freaks out. They're going to lose their guns. And I think, go back and look, that's historically true. Every time the Democrats talk about gun control, gun sales go through the roof.
Yeah, I think gun control as a political issue is a loser for Democrats. The most powerful Democrats that we've seen in recent memory were not able to get it done. And had they gotten it done, wouldn't we still be working on it? Wouldn't there be a next step? I don't think it's ever going to be enough, right?
Well, I think it's because a lot of times the Democrats are disingenuous and they say things that some of them.
Well, what is their secret plan about gun control? What is it that?
Well, it's gun confiscation. You know that. That's why I'm saying they're disingenuous, because they say they want sensible gun reform.
Why would they want to confiscate guns? For what?
Because they don't want people to have guns.
Why?
Because it's their belief that only they know how to solve the epidemic of gun violence, and that is that nobody can be trusted with firearms. They just don't believe it's our right. Some of them maybe believe that we're misinterpreting the Constitution. Others just simply believe that we shouldn't have guns because it's morally wrong.
Yeah, you're gonna wig out when you hear this one. So what I did see about gun control over the weekend is the theory that the Second Amendment is an extension of pro-slavery control.
I think you started to say this a week or two ago.
I don't think I knew.
Maybe it was off the air.
I don't know. I just saw a thing about this, and so why did that show up in the Constitution? What was going on? So remember that there were a lot more. So when you have a plantation with a lot of slaves, there's only a couple.
Southern or Hawaiian plantation?
Yeah, Southern. There's only a couple of. Well, maybe we had this discussion in the office.
Yeah,
I'm talking about Hawaiian plantation life, but the theory here is that the Second Amendment came up because. So, what are these militias that are referred to in the Second Amendment, right? And so, here's what you had. You had widespread slavery, and you had control of large amounts of slaves on plantations by just a few masters with guns. And then there were patrols that would go around and could be called out if there were some kind of, uprising or trouble on the plantation. Remember, the biggest fear that plantation owners and white Americans had during the time of slavery was that slaves would revolt and kill them. And so there were small patrols that you could call in to help you if you're having trouble with the slaves on your plantation. And then there were larger militias that could be armed and could come out and put down an uprising. So that's why the Second Amendment is there. It was never anything about some inherent right to arm yourself or protect yourself.
Is this a theory you subscribe to?
Well, sounds right to me. I mean, the fact is that the militias did exist to put down the uprisings, and it all makes sense to me. And I think that, it's just not true that this was put in there to protect some inherent right of Americans to have guns. That's not why it was put there.
That sounds pretty far-fetched to me. Isn't it also true that there were some...
I told you weren't going to like it, so...
Well, I mean, I'm not saying I don't like it. I don't think it's accurate. Isn't there places that didn't have slavery but also had gun owners?
Maybe they had gun owners, but this whole business about militias is directly...
I know, but even
directly related to putting down slave uprisings.
But why would the states that didn't have slaves want to have
the Constitution of the United States, not states?
Right, but there were some states that didn't want slavery, but they wanted guns.
I don't know, but I mean that the addition to the U.S. Constitution was as a result of a desire to have a mechanism to put down slave results.
Well, I guess I believe there's probably some truth to that. If you're suggesting that it's the sole reason why it's in there, that seems really far-fetched to me.
What other reason is there?
To uprise against your own government.
That's just not the way it happened, right?
Of course it is. That's how we came to be.
That's not what was going on.
We were a territory of England.
That is not what was going on.
It wasn't?
The Second Amendment. I mean, it wasn't in the original Constitution. It's the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
Wasn't on the minds of the founders, right? The framers. It had nothing to do about guns. There was no thought by the framers to put in anything in the original Constitution about guaranteeing people the right to have weapons in case they need to rise up against the government. That wasn't a thing, right?
How is it not a thing? How is it not a thing?
What was a thing was a widespread fear of
but you're getting lost in the weeds in the conversation of the day. Think about
that's what's important. What was going on at the time?
You're missing the biggest, most important thing, which is we went to war with England because they wanted to control us and we wanted to be separate from them.
If that was such a big thing.
Isn't it like the biggest thing, or we would be called England?
Well, if it was the biggest thing, wouldn't the framers have put it in the original Constitution?
What do you mean? We only have one Constitution.
Right. Well, but you have amendments. Those are afterthoughts to it. If it was the biggest thing on their mind that future American citizens would have to be able to arm themselves so that England couldn't come back and take them over, you think the framers would have put it in the Constitution. So I'm just saying, think about it, right? I'm not.
This is a story you just read, and it sounds great, but I mean,
sounds right to me.
I mean, it doesn't sound like it's. How do I want to say this?
It doesn't sound good for your.
No, it sounds like that's probably part of it, but to say that that's the only reason why it's in there, just sounds retarded.
It's a reason that has certainly been downplayed and hidden, right? Especially by modern gun
so fast forward to modern gun advocates, are we saying that because it was put in there for these malicious reasons, which I dispute wholeheartedly, are we saying that it doesn't belong now?
Well, it doesn't belong now. I mean, I don't. I mean, I don't care whether you have guns or you don't. Right?
You personally,
but I don't know that you need a Second Amendment to have guns, right?
Well, this goes back to the point I was making about
the
when
Second Amendment doesn't say that you can have guns you can have any kind of fucking guns you want or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
It says that the Second Amendment is a right for people for militias to bear arms, and the part that's not in there is so that they can put down slave uprisings.
Yeah, that's all horseshit.
That was a very legitimate fear in
the part that I
America.
thought you were gonna say, which would make more sense, is the argument that actually has some validity to it, which is militias versus the rest of the everyman. Does the common citizen, bless you,
thank you,
does the common citizen need to carry firearms, or should it be, as the language says, a well-regulated militia, which implies to me, a different meaning than the everyman walking down the street carrying a gun. I think that's...
Say it again now.
My point is this. If we're trying to dissect the language, which people way more educated and smarter than us have tried to do, and going back historically in references to English law and all the precedents where some of this shit came from, and even in this country and in the Supreme Court over our history have debated this. So I don't know. Don't take anything what I say as I don't know what I'm talking about. But I think the part that when we analyze the language today, you and I, as we're sitting here, when you talk about the term militia, a well-regulated militia, and having the right to bear arms, doesn't sound like a society that we know today, which is the common citizen owning guns. Do those two things align? Do they mean the same thing? I think that's up for debate, certainly. And we know what the Supreme Court has said about that.
Which I think, in view of this other view of why this may have come about in the first place, makes more sense and just lends more credence to the probability that this was not about you being able to have tons of guns or whatever the fuck you said earlier, right? Which I'm okay with you having because you're a good person. But I mean, I don't think that. I mean, that's why this is not such a big issue to me. I don't think that the Second Amendment has a fucking thing to do with you having guns or anybody else. I mean, whether you can have gun, you can't have a switchblade. You can't carry a switchblade around, right? So, I mean, there are just things that the society will make laws about.
And that's really where we're at. I mean, like I said, our Supreme Court over the years and largely on the conservative side have upheld the notion that Second Amendment means that you and I can carry guns, and we have restrictions all the way down to the state level, of course. Someday that might change.
I'm not a fan of this. I'm not a Second Amendment supporter. I'm not about you not being able to have a gun, but I am about us having. I mean, without the Second Amendment and all the fucking nonsense that is talked about in relationship to it, maybe we could have gun control regulations that make sense, right? There's no reason on this planet why you should wait. And we already have some, right? I mean, I don't think you're allowed to have an automatic weapon, right? If you can make a law that says you can't have an automatic weapon, you can make a law that says you can't have an assault rifle, right?
We had that law.
Yeah, and we should have kept it.
And obviously there's reasons why that stuff isn't in writing, because the technology didn't exist at the time. I mean, we had cannons and muskets, and now we have switchblades.
Either.
No, you can't. Yeah, isn't that ironic? Now you can have a assault rifle, but you can't have a cannon or a musket. I'm
afraid all of the arguments on the gun control, on the anti-gun control side, just don't hold up. So.
What about the libertarian position, which is basically you should be able to live your life any way you choose as long as it doesn't infringe on the way I live mine? Yeah. So,
well, you carrying a gun in open carry down the street infringes on my life.
How so?
Because
if nobody uses it to take your life.
Because that's scary as shit.
Yeah, but that's...
Yeah.
Walk up and drink a beer and calm down.
When there's a city council meeting and you're trying to figure out, you're going to pass some kind of ordinance about whatever in your community, and a whole bunch of hairy fucks come in with their armor and their open carry, that's just
I get it.
No need for
it's
that,
fearful,
right?
But it doesn't infringe on your right to live your life.
No, I mean I don't agree with that. So
it's factually true if nobody uses it to take your life from you. I mean, I get it. I'd be afraid too. I am a gun owner.
Yeah,
I have lots of guns, and we live in a place where you're not allowed to open carry, and you have to have a permit to conceal carry.
Right.
And I walk into,
it should be everywhere.
Well, I mean that's up for debate, but if I walk into a place and I see firearms out other than a gun store, I'd be freaked out by that. Yeah. I'd want to know what's going on.
Yeah. So I mean, so look, first off, libertarian. It's just a fantasy. I mean, there's no way to.
What's a fantasy?
It's not a form of government that can work in a society of this size.
Well,
it's a nice fairy tale. I get it, all that.
But here's the point. You're right. It probably can't and won't work in a
Right.
space of this size,
Right.
which is all the reason why this experiment isn't going to last.
Watch, you're stepping on the list. You're putting yourself on the list.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's the whole point, right? Is what are we talking about? We're talking about a culture. What's a culture? It's just a group of people who, agree to live a certain way. They all agree to the same rules, and we don't have that anymore.
Once again, I don't care about guns. I don't blame guns. So I think let's come all the way back to the beginning.
To the sailboat, or what?
No, not that. A little past that. So I don't think that gun manufacturers should be losing lawsuits when people get killed using guns or the bullets that they make. I don't think that's an extension of the kind of product liability, that you might say from. So when my airbag is activated, and the case around that airbag, puts a piece of shrapnel through my head and kills me, that manufacturer should be liable for that. Which, by the way, reminds me, I need to get my truck to Ford because there's a recall on my airbag. But that should definitely that liability for that should definitely be on that manufacturer.
If it caused your death?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it injured me, but let's assume that
not if it broke through your eyeglasses and that's what killed you.
If it pierces my skull and that killed me because
But wouldn't you have been dead if you didn't have airbags?
I'm dead anyway.
As I know.
So it didn't do what it was supposed to do. It falsely advertised the protection
didn't save
it was
you.
affording, right?
I see.
So I don't think.
What if it saved you, but it still punctured your eyes and you're blind?
Then they're liable for the blindness, which should be even a bigger.
But it saved your life.
Trust me. The payout for you causing me to be blind should be bigger than me being killed by the shrapnel in my head, right? Because I'm going to get the money for being blind, and only my family will get the other money. So, I mean, doesn't that make sense? So I just don't see where guns fall into that. I don't think anybody is expecting the gun somebody else gets to provide them with protection. I mean, it's not the company that made the gun or manufactured the ammunition that used it on me, right? It'll be the person that uses it. So in that case, I think the only person that bears any responsibility for how that gun or ammunition is used is the person shooting the gun.
Well, I'm happy to hear you say that because you're speaking truth, you're speaking common sense, you're speaking in opposition of what your party is saying. So I really appreciate your honesty.
I don't really agree with the gun control position of Democrats as a whole. Not because I disagree with them, but I think. Well, you asked me a specific question about liability, which is different than hey, a gun control advocate who is advocating for more gun control laws of whatever kind. Some of that I can agree with, some of that I don't care. But as far as liability for manufacturers, I don't agree with that. So, and I know that that's happening more and more. So those cases, and I do believe it's the big tobacco, big pharma model that they're trying, and I just don't see how that's the same. So,
but wasn't it like with the big tobacco thing? Their whole deal was they denied that it was addictive, and
right,
and,
just like pharma.
But
right.
not only that they denied it, but that they knew the opposite was true. So,
right.
So that, I mean, you could argue why those people should be responsible.
Right. Same with Purdue Pharma. I mean, they've lost multiple cases. They knew what they were doing with the way they were marketing it. There's all kinds of proof of that. And so it's really very much the same thing. I don't think that I just don't see how the liability is the same, when we talk about Remington or something like that. So yeah, that's an interesting question. But and hey, here's the thing. I don't know. I think the bigger discussion that I don't hear is, how is gun control, how does that stop people that get a hold of guns that shouldn't have them from doing shit they shouldn't do? I don't understand, how it stops it, right? And so, I've seen some shit on Instagram, and I kind of want one of these, like a slingshot that I could kill you with a slingshot as easy as I could kill you with a gun. So I mean, I just don't know that solves the problem.
It doesn't. It doesn't. But they want complete control. You doing okay on pee break?
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thought I'd check in with you.
That's no kind of
I don't know if you're squirming.
Yeah.
Are you giving me this?
No.
Do we have a signal if you have to pee?
We don't. I'll say, I got to pee.
They want complete control, and what better way to guard against a revolution than to disarm your citizens?
That is just ridiculous.
It's not.
That's not.
It's not, and it's happened elsewhere around the world, and it can happen here.
Well,
I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not saying it is, but it can.
I get that, and again, I am not in favor of anybody taking your guns.
Thank you.
But
can you write a letter to your representatives?
Sure, but I think that regulations that dictate who can have them, how you can go about getting them, what's the legal way. I think all of that is fine. So I'm very much against the resistance, the whole slippery slope bullshit from the NRA. In fact, I'm against the NRA. I mean, that is a fraudulent piece of shit, and that's probably a criminal organization.
But you have your reasons
you
why you're against the NRA, but are you against a gun association, a group of people coming together to advocate for gun rights? Or is it just the NRA and its
gun rights,
history?
Guns don't have rights, okay? People have rights. So gun rights.
Yeah, but if the NRA didn't exist, we probably wouldn't have any guns left in this country.
I don't know about that. I mean, it's all kind of like, again, it comes back to like, okay, so this is me talking to the Democrats, right? If you get your way and you pass all the regulations you want, and I still, to this day, don't know of a single Democrat that's ever said the words, want to take all your guns away. I've never heard that by anybody. So, I don't know, but...
they've said that.
I don't...
what's the dude in Texas, Beto... O'Rourke, is that his name?
Doesn't represent the entire Democratic Party.
You said you never heard of a Democrat.
Well, I've never heard him say that either.
He did say it, and he's one of them.
Well, I'll look it up.
Okay.
But then I'll change my statement. Generally, you don't hear them saying that. I mean, I think that the reasonable asks are for better controls, better regulations, and I don't have any problem with that. So, keep your guns. Just don't shoot me with them. That's all I'm going to say.
That's a great bumper sticker. And I still, keep your guns, just don't shoot me with them.
I still think that, unfortunately, my friends, that the criminals will still have guns. They'll still get them because there's just a zillion of them, right? I mean, they're always going to have guns. And hey, if they shoot you through the head with a metal ball shot out of a slingshot, you're still dead. If they take a kitchen knife and come up and stab you with it on the street, you're still dead. So
if a Republican shoots a Democrat and they survive, are you in favor of them being prescribed an opiate for the pain?
Yes. Wow, you wore me down on that one.
I started to ask you this too because this was fast forward to what's happening now with the congressional recess. She does it to you every time. I'm going to turn this off.
Go ahead.
Turn it off in the background.
Yeah.
Where are you at on this eviction moratorium?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? I'm very torn about that. The eviction moratorium because of COVID, right? So, what do we think is happening? I mean, what do we think the pro is for that, right? I mean,
there's no pros.
I mean, are people out of work still because of COVID?
No.
I can't. I mean, what's the real thing?
Well, the reality is this. When the sky was falling 2 Marches ago, right? When the sky was falling and we were all told that we needed to hunker down because this disease is going to kill everybody. The idea of hunkering down and literally not leaving your house, people started to think, oh, yeah, that means I can't go to work and my place of business is going to close and my way of making a living means I can't buy food or pay my rent. And so all kinds of relief packages were put in place, everything from PPP loans to mortgage forbearance and eviction moratorium.
Who's not back to work?
Well, that is the question, right? So we had, I think, on a federal level, a ban on evictions, which basically meant, if you don't pay your rent, and I don't pretend to be an expert, and it varies by place, but you have to not pay your rent for a long time before you can legally be forced out.
Probably 6 months or
at
something.
least, I think.
Yeah.
And so in places like California, and I think across the country, a ban was put in place that landlords couldn't evict you for not paying your
Does
rent.
that mean they couldn't start that process that would eventually end
I
up
don't
in
know.
a marshal coming to your house and taking you out of there in 6 months down the road if you really push it to the limit?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it means you can't start or you can't, you don't have a court date. I'm not exactly sure what it means, but I think that what it does mean for sure is that you can't be removed. You can't be forced out for not paying rent. The landlord has no legal recourse to get you out of there. And so that had an end date, like a lot of the protections placed on it because of COVID.
Yeah.
And then that got extended and it got extended. And by the way, I'm pretty sure, you're right.
Oh, I missed an appointment. Oh, shoot. Okay, never mind. Go ahead.
I'm pretty sure
I'm going to send the text.
that provision came down from all places, the CDC, which is another head scratcher. Why do we have a government agency, the Centers for Disease Control, that makes all of the regulations and restrictions around COVID? Why does that agency have the power to impose an eviction moratorium? That is fucking strange to me. But the bottom line is it's been extended. It was due to sunset or expire, I guess, July 31st. And the Democrats, all I saw this entire weekend was them going crazy, and they're on the steps of the Capitol saying, come back from your recess, and we owe it to our people to vote and restore this ban on evictions. And I don't get it. And the question you just asked.
From Texas? The guys from Texas?
No. From in D.C. Everybody in D.C. That mostly the House and Senate Democrats are urging their fellow knucklehead Democrats to come back and do something, get the language extended.
Because they're in recess. Yeah,
because they're in recess. But you asked the most important question: are people back to work? Do they need this support? And I don't see it. And
I was going to look up and see if I could quickly see what they're saying the unemployment rate is right now. I haven't seen it or heard it for a long time. So, I mean, here's what I do here. I can't find anybody to work. I can't get employees. I want to reopen my business.
That's all true.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it can't be both ways.
It can't be both ways. And that's what I don't get. And that argument is true. Almost all industries are affected in this country, that it's hard to find workers. People are quitting their jobs left and right. And, of course, the other argument is, well, pay them more and they'll come back. Those both can be true at the same time, right? But what does any of that have to do with preserving somebody's right to be evicted? And at the end of the day, if they were getting unemployment benefits, people were being paid to not work because they were told they couldn't work because of COVID. So if they were getting money, extra money, shouldn't they be using that money to pay their rent? I just don't get it. I mean, that whole thing seems crazy to me.
I saw the blurbs over the news over the weekend, as it was coming to an end and this and that. And I frankly didn't pay nearly as much attention to it as you apparently have. On the face of it, I was never a big fan of that. I mean, I have owned property and collected rent from people, and I would be pretty pissed off,
of course,
if anybody said, hey, if these people stop paying my rent and my costs continued for that. I mean, if the people saying that I can't kick them out are going to pay my end of it, fine. But if they're not doing that, then fuck off. Leave me alone.
They're not doing that.
Yeah. So then I guess I'm just going to make this conversation a little shorter and say, I'm not.
We have made, I don't know if we want to say that this podcast, it certainly is an experiment, but did it have a goal? I don't think it has a goal. But if I could make it up this many months later that the goal is to ultimately pull you closer to my side, I've succeeded with 2 big wins today. So thank you, my friend.
Okay,
I really appreciate it.
Well, that's going to drive my fan base through the roof. So maybe, and I think I think that's probably true, and I'm happy. I'm fine with that. I don't talk to you about these things. I didn't start talking to you about these things a few years ago, before the podcast even started, so I could just stay in my own. Never have a change of opinion. I mean, it's interesting because, we don't agree on everything. There's a lot of things we don't agree on, but I would think that after I mean, think about it, man. How many podcasts is this? 50?
Something like that.
And it's going to be 50. So if that's 50 at an average of pushing 2 hours, 100 hours of conversation, I mean, I think I'm pretty sure that there's some things that we've talked about that I've given you information on that you didn't know about, and so hopefully that has helped you see another side of some of these issues. And I certainly have come your way on several topics, right? So.
Well, in an effort to get back on track with your fan base, do you want to end the show on something we disagree on?
No, not at all.
I mean, what do I have left that I could anger? I tried to bait you into the Olympics last week and get you talk because the Olympics have become so political. There's a ton of politics in the last week about the Olympics.
Yeah, I still don't care.
I can't get you to go there.
Simone Biles is going to...
she's in, she's out.
She's going to do something. She's going to be in something tonight, and I don't care. I mean, I don't care about the Olympics.
She took a lot of shit from people. That became a hot topic.
Well, I mean, let's talk about that for 1 second. So here's what I heard yesterday or this morning. I think maybe, I can't remember. So a bunch of right-wing pundits decided to talk shit about Simone Biles. So just let me say, for all of them, whoever you are, and I don't have their names handy, I remember the person that was, this was Bill Maher. I talked about it. I watched his show from Friday, I guess. I watched it last night. And he was saying that some chicken shit right-wing talking heads were saying, had decided to comment on Simone Biles and how it was shameful or, whatever.
Somebody used the word
shameful. She was
shameful.
a quitter or some shit like that. Well, fuck off. Who cares? First off, it's not important. Sports is not important. The Olympics are not important. And whether she does or doesn't, not important. And for all of you right-wing talking heads who decide to comment about it, you're not important. Fuck off. Nobody cares what you care about Simone Biles. Please find something more important to talk about, right? Sitting in your fucking chairs, like Bill Maher said, sitting in your chair with your fucking cracker crumbs all over your shirt, talking shit about Simone Biles. But it is fun.
I mean, I know you don't give a shit about the Olympics or sports in general, but it is cool every 4 years, or in this case, it's been 5 years, that the world comes together to, play games.
Okay. Make that the third one. I'll acquiesce on that one. I just don't care about the Olympics. I just think, I just don't know. I guess it's all right. I mean, people like sports, so, I don't have a day-to-day grudge against sports. I personally typically don't give a shit, but, I mean, it gives people something to do. I think not so much sports. I pretty much always don't like the athletes, right? So I don't have anything against Simone Biles, but when you talk about baseball players or football players or hockey players as people, they're assholes.
They're not people, they're assholes.
They're prima donnas.
So there's a mix, right? I mean, the gymnasts, for example, they compete year round. There's events that they have outside of the Olympics, but many of them, I think, don't really go on to have a career in gymnastics. They go do other things, when they get into the late 20s and into their 30s. But there are some sports like tennis, for example, that you have professional players on the pro tour who are coming into play. And one of them was this guy, I don't know if you know his name, Novak Djokovic.
I've heard the name.
He's
it's so
like
odd.
number 1 or 2 in the world or something.
Okay. Is he in the Olympics?
He is, yeah. Okay. And he's a major winner in tennis. I mean, he's like one of the top guys, right? And he was one of the first to take a shit on Simone Biles, and then he lost I think it was his bronze medal match.
Oh.
So he got 4th, didn't place, and had a fucking tantrum and threw his racket and was like throwing tennis balls all over the court. Had an emotional meltdown, and he was basically saying that Simone Biles needs to get her emotions in check and buck up and be better. And here this guy has a tantrum and breaks his racket, which isn't the first time he's done that. He's been known to go off the rails.
Is he? So because he's so important. Because these sports people are so important. Many years ago, I went to Hawaii. And the day we checked into a hotel on Oahu, there next to this hotel, because this was a relatively undeveloped resort area called.
What year was this?
Colina. Boy, I don't remember.
Before or after Magnum PI?
After, but before the new one.
I just started watching the old one.
Oh, really? Cool. That's good. Just don't look at his shorts. So
Those are coming back.
Yeah. So
I wear those.
Next to this hotel, because there was all this space, they built a football field, and NFL teams would come there for the All-Star football game,
For the
what do they call it?
Pro Bowl.
Pro Bowl. And so there was a practice field there. So a lot of the participants were staying at this hotel, and so we came the day after the Pro Bowl, and so we had to wait a little while for our room to get ready because some of these dipshit football players wouldn't get the fuck out of their room, right? And then so we had to sit in the bar. And
they had a late checkout.
Yeah, and we had to sit in the bar and wait for our room. That was supposed
Were you drinking
to be
back
ready.
then?
Yeah. And
So that wasn't terrible.
And there were Pro Bowl.
Sir, you must go wait in the bar. We're forcing you
Yeah,
to
I'll be
not
all
go
right.
to your room
Yeah, I'll be okay.
and go to the bar.
And then there's football players in there, and these whiny bitches complaining about this, that, and the other. And I'm like, you're sitting here in Hawaii, and you get paid millions.
Yeah, but they're at the
Just
Pro
get
Bowl
the
because
fuck
they
outta
didn't
here.
make the Super Bowl.
Is that
That's
what
why
it
they're
is?
pissed off.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Well, whatever. It just cemented what I already believed, that they were spoiled little fucking brats.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
all
I don't
true.
like them. Yeah. So that's my Pro Bowl story. I'm sticking
Well,
to
all
it.
right. So, any other Olympic comments you want to make today?
Make it end. Make it stop.
It is. I think it's over this week.
Okay, good.
And it's going to be in Paris next time, and hopefully the COVID is
I'm
gone.
going to boycott that.
And there's
because
no more government control of our lives.
I don't like the French, so I'm going to boycott that.
Did you like French fries?
That's nothing to do with France.
Well, it's you have to say the word French every time you order French
know.
fries. It doesn't make you think of France.
Did you ever call them freedom fries?
Never.
When we were going through our real hate of France.
I call them chips,
Chips.
like the English.
Yeah, right. Fish and chips.
Fish and chips.
Yeah. Nope, that's it. Olympics. Goodbye. See you in 3 years. I guess that's the other bad part. Now it's only a 3-year turnaround. When are
This
the
time.
Winter Olympics?
That's the one thing nobody really cares about.
Okay.
Even
That's
people who like the Olympics don't care about the Winter Olympics.
Oh, that's good to know. All right.
Actually, those are going to be canceled because of global warming. There's no more winter.
That's very possible.
All right, my friend. You had enough for today?
All right. See you, everybody. Thanks,
All right.
Travis. Bye.